Hello, my creeplings! We're back! And I'm finally getting around to one I've mentioned in a couple of different videos. I actually wanted to do this one back last Halloween when I was doing a 31-day challenge that I did not make. So we're going to pull one out of the mothballs tonight from, what was it, 1986? Called Night of the Creeps. Now, I mentioned this in both, I know my Monster Squad video, and I know my Slither video, and possibly in my Killer Clowns video, all because they're all have ties to this movie. This movie was directed by Fred Dekker, written by Fred Dekker too, if I remember correctly. Yes, written and directed by Fred Dekker, the guy who wrote and directed the Monster Squad. So there's that tie. This was his first feature film. Squad was the second, and I think his third one was RoboCop 3. And after that, the poor man didn't direct a film again, from what I understand, because RoboCop 3 pretty much gave him the kiss of death for some reason. Something to look into later. I also may have mentioned this in Killer Clowns because we have an actress from Killer Clowns shows up in here in a bit part, Suzanne Snyder. And I mentioned this in Slither because this has got a very similar premise. Slugs that invade your brain and turn you into a zombie. This was done in a much different way, though. I love this little gem of a film. It is an homage to all those lovely B movies from the 50s and the sci-fi shit of the 60s. And Dekker understood the assignment, and I would have definitely given him a solid A on this. This one's also got a handful of names in here that, cast that we're gonna recognize either by name or by, I saw them in that. So let's just run down the cast list real quick, okay? We have Jason Lively as one of our leads, Chris Romero. Pay attention to some of these character last names. We'll go over that in a minute too. Most people recognize him as Rusty from National Lampoon's European Vacation. He tended to play the gawky nerd a lot. He doesn't really do much now. He's actually Blake and Robin Lively's brother. So there's a whole acting Lively family that I totally blanked out on for a while. I'd always kind of thought Robin and Jason were related. Totally forgot about Blake being their sister as well. So yeah, bonus. We got an acting dynasty here. Guy named Steve Marshall who plays a character named James Carpenter Hooper, but they call him JC. Tom Atkins. Gotta love me some Tom Atkins. He's a character actor that plays pretty much your hard-ass cop the entire time. He plays the hard-ass cop in here, and I love him to death because of it. His character's name is Detective Ray Cameron. Jill Whitlow is our other lead, our female lead, who plays Cynthia Cronenberg. Alan Kaiser. The only thing I remember him from was Mama's Family, where he played Bubba for a season or two. He plays a preppy asshole in this one. His name's Brad. Of course his name is Brad. Any other names other than Suzanne Snyder? Again, she plays one of the sorority girls. We have a special appearance by Dick Miller, Mr. Futterman from the Gremlins series, and many, many Roger Corman films. And then Robert Kurtzman and Howard Berger of KNB. This is pre-KNB being a company. Actually are some of the zombies in here, and they also worked on the effects as part of a big group of effects guys. I don't think this was done by any one house, but again, I'm going to go back to saying I think between this and Evil Dead 2 and a few other horror movies that I have watched, that's kind of what put the nucleus of the start of K&B effects together. So it's nice to see these two guys getting their moment too. So did you hear some of the last names? We have Romero. We have Carpenter and Hooper. Cameron. Cronenberg. We also have a Sergeant Ramey, a Detective Landis, an Officer Craven, an Officer Bava, and I do believe there was another one that is not listed in my cast list, but it comes up on the radio. all these names are horror movie not actors, directors who are all very well known for their craft. I mean, Raimi, come on, Cronenberg, Carpenter, Cameron, even the college. The college that they go to is Corman College. So going back to the granddaddy of some of these films, Roger Corman. This movie is a trip. It starts off looking like a low-grade sci-fi movie with a chase on a spaceship with rubber suit aliens. I mean, they are very obviously rubber suit aliens. I think that was the way they were going for it. They're naked. Their little butts are adorable. They kind of remind me of the characters in Close Encounters of the third kind? Yes, third kind. Sorry. Brain all got up on itself again. They're trying to chase an experiment that ends up getting off the spaceship. It lands on Earth in 1959. Okay, so we're going to do some time jumps here. At this point in 1959, there is a young couple on a date. Now, she had just broken up with her ex-boyfriend, who was a cop. Pay attention to that. And the night that she's out there at the Overlook with her new boyfriend, watching for falling stars, which, yeah, they saw something fall from the sky, an axe-wielding maniac is wandering around, had escaped from the lunatic bin. I can't get any more B-movie than that. And then during this whole, it's shot in black and white. It looks like just like an old, like, I Married a Teenage Werewolf. You know, I married a space alien from outer space. I was a teenage werewolf type. It looks like a 1950s B-movie. And they're acting like they did it in a 1950s B-movie. Loved it. Long and the short of that is, the cop is actually Detective Cameron, who we re-meet later. And the new boyfriend goes off to see what fell out of the sky. Why do people do that? Because he ends up dead and laying there. She ends up getting chopped up by the axe murderer. So, yeah, not very good. Oh, I'm snotty. Allergy season. Sorry. So about 27 years later, it's 1986. We're at Cameron College, which is where this happened. And it's Pledge Week. And we have Chris and JC. Now, JC, I want to say this. I don't know if the actor was actually disabled, but the character is. He uses crutches. His legs don't work. I can't remember which one that is. Is it cerebral palsy? Or it's something like that. They play it very well. Yes, he himself jokes about it. I happen to know that a lot of people who do have, you know, kind of disabilities like that tend to use humor to disarm people about it. So that, to me, is kind of true to who this person could have been as a character. He's a bit of a wise ass. And Chris is not. Chris is down in the dumps because his high school sweetheart just decided that they didn't need to be together anymore. Poor guy. So they're walking sorority and frat row during Pledge Week when all the parties are going on. And of course, Chris spots Cynthia from across the street. And he goes to pursue her. She has a boyfriend, Brad. Brad is your typical 80s preppy asshole. So in order to get in good, they decide that they're going to pledge to Brad's frat, which I just don't know why they feel like they need to do that. But they did. And part of the pledge hazing for them is to steal a cadaver and put it on a rival frat's porch. Well, they go to steal a cadaver from the medical school, and they end up finding this guy in cryostasis. The guy is familiar. Yeah, it was the boyfriend from the 59 scene. They thaw him out. They freak. They run. Well, later, he basically is zombified, and he shows up at the sorority house because that was the last place where he remembers being. That's where he picked up his date from. Not Jill. Jill's the actress's name. Cynthia sees him. The next day, Brad goes and it's like, dude, that wasn't cool. A lot of girls were, upset by your prank because the zombie body ended up in the front yard and the head had split open. Detective Cameron's called on the case. He starts thinking something about the axe murderer being back. There's a lot going on. Long and the short of it is, the experiment that got out of the spaceship in 1959 is a bunch of slugs. Go in through your mouth, incubate in your brain, turn you into a zombie. Well, because they had put this guy in cryostasis, they basically laid dormant. The second his body got thawed out, they started taking over. First it was the zombie, and then I think they were basically incubating in jars of human brains in the basement of the sorority. Therefore, one of the girls, physiology, anatomy, something. One of her classes, they were supposed to dissect human brains. So these, I don't remember if it actually went down there, but I know the hint is that they're down there. They keep coming out and taking over people. One's a janitor that turned in JC and Chris, who Detective Cameron calls them Spanky and Alfalfa. Whew, excuse me. Getting a little late tonight. He ends up being taken over by the slugs, and then Cynthia finds them because the cat that had died came back, and she's like, I thought you guys were going to be the only ones that would believe me, that body was alive, and it was in front of my room, my window. I thought he was a zombie. Well, JC, being the good friend that he is, decides to go use the facilities. I mean, he actually is using the facilities, but he leaves those two alone. Well, while he's in the bathroom, the janitor comes in and basically expires. The things pop out of his head. And unfortunately, JC becomes one of our victims. But you don't realize exactly the extent of it until later, when Chris is getting ready to go to a dance with Cynthia. Got her name right, yay! And he sees a old school mini cassette recorder on JC's desk, because they're roommates, with a note that says, play me, and he plays him, and this is one of the most heartbreaking moments, but it's a great info dump too. JC's still somewhat in control of his brain, so somehow he manages to get back. He has enough facilities to get back to the dorm room, record this, let him know that he thinks he's dead because he has no pulse, he has no heartbeat. He can, it got in through his mouth, he can feel them in his brain, but he knows that fire will kill him because he lit one on fire with a match in the bathroom. And that he managed to walk there on his own without his crutches. His solution is to go to the boiler room and see if he can burn them out. And he's like, if I'm not back, at least you know heat will kill them. Now, some people may listen to this because of there's a line in there where he basically says, I love you. He could have been queer-coded. He could have been queer. He could have just, I love you like a brother. We don't know, but it was very poignant and very brave of 80s filmmakers to put a piece like that in where it could have been read as gay or homosexual, and I applaud you, Fred Decker, for doing that, and not making it the butt of the joke. That's very important. So back to the story that Chris does find JC's body, and all the little slugs are burning, so JC doesn't make it, which is sad. But the slugs also did manage to find the body of the axe murderer who Detective Cameron had killed and buried in a vacant lot, which is now underneath the cottage for the house mother for Cynthia's sorority. Kills her. Yes, this gnarly, half-rotted corpse was buried with an axe. Kills her And the slugs that invaded him invaded the dog. So the dog is now a carrier. The formal dance, winter formal that Cynthia had asked Chris to. And you see a nice montage of all the frat boys getting ready, all the sorority girls getting ready. While at the same time... Oh, I burped. Excuse me. I've got some gas today. Chris goes to Detective Cameron. Detective Cameron, I believe, at this point, has already seen the slugs and has kind of figured out what's going on because they re-killed the axe murderer. And he's like, they got Alfalfa because he's Spanky. I kind of laugh at that bit. And they go to the armory and requisition a flamethrower from Dick Miller's character. Like I said, nice little cameo appearance. Just makes you laugh. I really want to apologize. I didn't think I'd be yawning this much. I'm sorry. Well, the frat boys are on a bus. They're all drinking. You know, drunk party bus type shit to go pick up their dates. The dog by now has infected Brad, who is now zombified, and has also caused a crash with the bus and infected all the frat boys. So there's a lot of undead, infected people running around. We get to a showdown, and that's when we do find out that flamethrower works very well. You should. One shoots in the head, causes the cranium to explode. The other person follows up with the flamethrower, and well, this is when we finally figure out that they have multiplied in the basement because of those human brains. Detective Cameron, in his infinite wisdom, is down there with gasoline and bleeding the boiler, and he blows that fucker sky high. Now here's where we get the possibility of two endings. I have the director's cut, so I have one ending, but I've seen the other ending. They're both good. They both leave you on a cliffhanger. Original theatrical ending, which was not Decker's first choice, is after everything's all blown up, the dog comes back and infects Cynthia. The ending I have, which I think is a little better. They're both good, but I think this one's a little better. Place blows up. In the ensuing chaos, you see Cameron's charred, zombified corpse walking down the street. Cigarette's still damn lit, because this guy smokes like a stack. This is the 80s. Falls over, head explodes, and the slugs head straight to the cemetery. And we cut out on spotlights from the spaceship has finally come back to try and collect or observe its experiment. This movie is a trip. It is B-movie gold. It's funny. The effects are a bit cheesy, but they're still good. Like I said, watch out for Howard Berger and Robert Kurtzman. Robert Kurtzman? Yes, Robert Kurtzman as zombies, as frat boy zombies. Decker knew what he was doing here. And he went straight for it, and he just, yeah. I didn't know about this movie until I watched when the Monster Squad got its anniversary release on DVD, and I watched the extras, and I'm like, oh, that sounds like a cute little movie. I remember kind of seeing ads for it. Now, I didn't know that was what it was actually called, though, because when it was released in my state, especially around, it said like Cincinnati and other markets, it was released as Homecoming Night. Yes. And my market is Ohio, so it was Cincinnati, and I'm assuming the rest of Ohio got the same treatment. And again, I was like 6 years old, so I don't vividly remember this. So, but yeah, I watched it. I loved it. I'll watch it again. I probably watch it every spooky season, and now I have, I had an excuse to watch it today. So, to contrast and compare with Slither. Honestly, I would watch these as a double feature with this one first. They're both horror comedies. They're both about alien slugs. that invade your brain. I've got like something in my teeth, sorry. I keep making weird faces trying to get it out. They both have a great cast. And that's kind of where the similarities end. This didn't have like a Grant monster or the same kind of build up that we did in Slither. There's no mental connection like there is with the girl in Slither. They're both great movies. They both kind of came from similar directors who had very similar influences. So you can see where they would, complement each other. So yeah, if you liked one, I think you will like the other. If you liked the Monster Squad, I definitely think you will like this. Little Easter egg to look for. There is, unfortunately, when JC gets attacked in the bathroom, on the wall, it actually says "Go Monster Squad" on it. I don't know if that was before they got the idea for the squad or what, but so there's a little Decker Easter egg, kind of like the Pixar Easter eggs. This movie's just funny as hell, and the effects are good, and it's got some great listen for them name drops and anything with Tom Atkins. I mean, this is Tom Atkins. If you grew up in the 80s and you watched horror movies, or you grew up in the 90s and watched 80s horror movies, you know who the fuck Tom Atkins is, and you love Tom Atkins. If you don't, learn how to love Tom Atkins. Familiarize yourself with his work. He's a gem. Granted, he does tend to play very similar characters each time, but he plays them so well that you're just like, you're sitting around a casting table in 1992. We need a hard-ass cop. What's Tom Atkins doing? And there's nothing wrong with that. It keeps you out there. It gets your face out there. Helps pay your bills. And it gives you some fun lines to play with a lot of times. His big line is always, "Thrill me." He answers the phone, "Thrill me." You're about to, give him some information. "Thrill me, detective." So it's kind of, it's maybe a bit one note, but it's still fun. This was a nicely cast film, and it seemed like the cast got along really well too. So especially our three leads, they still to this day, from what I understand, will think of each other fondly, and if they're at cons together, they're together hanging out. So that's always good. So great movie, Night of the Creeps. I highly suggest watching it. Do a double feature with that and Slither, or do a double feature with that and the Monster Squad. Two Decker films that, had a lot of heavy early cinematic, or not early cinematic, but classic cinema influences, whether it's B movies or Abbott and Costello. You see all of that. On that note, I'm going to try not to burp again. I'm going to just say goodnight, my creeplings. Thank you for joining me. I will see you next time. Bye.